In this After Effects tutorial, we'll learn how to make 5 viral animations in the style of Julián Alborná. So if you want to learn professional animation techniques, stay and watch the tutorial until the end, because I'll explain everything step by step. By the way, if you want to support the channel, in addition to your likes, you can also do it from my Patreon page. There, I share with you all the projects I use in the tutorials, so you can keep practicing and learning. I leave the link in the description if you want to take a look. The first thing I'm going to do is import these 2 files and save them in a folder. Now I'm going to create a composition called Animation 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames and with 10 seconds left. Right-click and let's create a shape layer called Box. Add a rectangle and a fill. By the way, if you like documentary-style editing, my course is now available. But it's not just a course in which I show you how to animate a sequence in After Effects and that's it. But I show you the entire procedure that I followed to create this animation. From the initial idea to the final render, going through each and every phase of the creative process. I'll leave the link in the description in case you want to take a look. The fill color being black. For size, deactivate this string to modify the values separately. For X, set it to 900, and for Y, set it to 200. Now, with the Pan Behind tool, let's place the anchor point at the bottom. To do this precisely, hold down the Control key. We move the rectangle down. Set the Y value to 730. Now let's animate the scale. We deactivate this chain and mark a keyframe. We set the scale to 0 on the Y-axis. At 120, we set it back to 100. We smooth this keyframe and relink the scale dimensions. We move this handle to the far left. We duplicate the shape, rename it, and delete the scale keyframes. We unlink the dimensions again and set the Y value to 500. We're going to change the color to differentiate them, and we're going to lower the opacity so we can see through it. For now, we've deactivated this shape. Now we're going to bring in the image of the ball. We set the scale to 80. At the beginning of the timeline, we mark a keyframe at the position and move the ball down until it's no longer visible in the composition. At 120, we set it to 540, the default. We're also going to do a small rotation animation. We mark a keyframe at the beginning of the timeline and set it to 180 degrees. And in the 3rd second, we set the value back to 0. With F9, we smooth all the keyframes and move all the handles to the far left. We make this layer visible again. And with the rectangle tool and this icon activated, we're going to create a mask like this. We'll want it to be roughly halfway down the shape in black. It doesn't need to be exactly in the middle. We'll set this mask to subtract mode and set the feather to 15. We can now set the opacity to 100. Now, we're going to make the soccer ball layer an alpha matte of this shape. But look, here in this part, we can see transparency through the ball. If we want, we can delay the animation a bit or do something else. Being in the last keyframe, we're going to parent this layer to this other one. I'm going to make it visible again to see it better. The reason the ball looks transparent is because the box matte layer doesn't have the same animation as the black one. And in this part, you can see the background of the composition. But if we parent it with the pick whip, problem solved. Look, now the ball is no longer transparent. Okay. From this composition, we're going to create another one called animation camera. We have to convert the layer to 3D. We're also going to put this texture underneath. Lower the scale a bit since it's too large, and to fill all those empty spaces, we add the CC reptile effect. We expand it 2,000 pixels in all directions. With right-click, we create a 35mm camera and a node. Right-click again, New, Null Object. Convert it to 3D, and link the camera to it. I'm going to activate the safety margins to get my bearings. And before animating the null, I'm going to zoom in a little with the camera. We mark a keyframe at second 2. And to see it better, more or less around this part, we send the camera back, we give it a value of 2200. Now we put this keyframe at the beginning. We smooth this and set the influence to 100%. We display the position of the null and mark a keyframe at second 1, advance to second 3, and move everything to the right. We give it a value of 730 on the x-axis. Now we're going to write the text. We center the anchor point and center it in the view. Make it a little bigger, convert it to 3D, and position it. I'm going to make some adjustments to the text to give it a little contrast. At this point, we're going to do a small animation for the text. We'll mark a keyframe. And at second 1, we'll move it to the right until it's above the ball and can't be seen outside. We'll cut the layer at this point and smooth all the keyframes. We'll set the influence for these handles to around 50%, and for these two to around 70%. We'll place the text layer below the ball. Let's preview it. If you want, you can leave it like this, but I'm going to use an adjustment layer with the posterized time effect and the frame rate at 12 frames per second, since I really like this jerky motion effect. Oh, I almost forgot. We also have to convert the texture to 3D and center it in the view. Oh, it looks like we need to increase the pixels here. Now we're done with this cool and distinctive effect from Julián Alborná's animations. We can make a small adjustment to the shape matte mask to make it look a little more realistic. Select these 2 points and move it down slightly. We also set the mask feather to 20. It looks much better now. To create this effect, I'll need these files. I'm going to put them in a folder called Assets. This folder will be for the compositions. With it selected, I'm going to create the first one. It's going to be called Parallax Windows. 1080x 1920 at 30 frames and with 20 seconds left. I'm going to use this texture as the background, rotate it 90 degrees, and scale it down a bit. Convert the layer to 3D. If the cube icon doesn't appear, press F4. To see what's happening better, activate Custom View 01. Now, to fill in all these empty spaces, we're going to add the CC Reptile effect and set these 2 parameters to 5000. From Repeat, change it to Unfold. With right-click, we create a shape layer called Matte Windows. We add a rectangle and a fill. Now you can't see anything because with this view activated, we have to convert the shape to 3D. There we have it. We deactivate this chain to move the values separately. In X we put 640 and in Y 830. We make this texture an alpha matte of the shape, but we have to invert the alpha matte to create this kind of window. Now we can activate the camera again. Below the texture, we are going to put this image, convert it to 3D, and adjust the scale. We are also going to put this background, make it 3D, and to create the parallax effect, we are going to move it towards the background. We put a value of 1000 on the Z-axis. We paint these 2 layers the same color. And we adjust the scale of the background. With right-click, we create a 35mm camera and a node. Again, right-click, New, Null Object. We convert it to 3D and parent the camera to it. We mark a keyframe at the beginning of the timeline. At second 2, we're going to add 960 pixels to the x-axis, so we have this movement. For this exercise, I'm going to put 3 images, so I'm going to need 3 windows like this. To make them, we go to the shape layer and duplicate the rectangle path 1. To move with total precision, we're going to put a value of 960 on the x-axis. We duplicate again, and to this copy, we add 960 on the x-axis. So we have these 3 windows, separated at the same distance from each other. Now we add the image of the next character. Change its color and convert it to 3D. At the last keyframe, we press Ctrl plus Home to center it in the view. We adjust the scale and position it. At second 4, we add 960 pixels to the x-axis again. And as we can see, the camera is positioned right in front of the third window. This way, at each stop we make, the scene will be perfectly centered. We repeat the process, place the image of the third character here, change its color, and convert the layer to 3D. At the last keyframe, we center it by pressing Ctrl plus Home, adjust the scale and position it. Now, to avoid seeing the same background in all the scenes, we do the following. Duplicate this shape layer and rename it as Matte Background 01. Change its color and make it visible again. We make 2 more copies, and to see it better, activate Custom View 01. For now, I'm going to deactivate these 2. In this other one, we expand it under Contents, and we are left with only Rectangle 1. We'll delete the other 2. We repeat the process with this copy, leaving only the center rectangle. In this other layer, we delete the first 2 to remain with rectangle 3. Now we have them separate. The next step is to alpha matte this layer from this other one. So, with the pick whip of the track matte, we parent them. Now this background is only visible in the first scene. We position ourselves on this keyframe and bring in the following background, change its color, convert it to 3D, and center it in view. To create the parallax effect, we send it 1000 pixels towards the background on the z-axis. If necessary, we adjust the scale. We alpha matte this layer from this other one. This looks perfect. We position ourselves on the last keyframe and repeat the process with the third background. We place it below this layer, change its color, convert it to 3D. and center it in view. We also send it 1000 pixels back. Now, we make this background layer an alpha matte of this other one in red. And this way, we have the corresponding background for each scene and with this beautiful parallax effect. That's why it's very important to understand how track mattes work, because we can make animations as cool as this one. At second 6, we copy and paste this keyframe. And at second 8, we copy and paste the first keyframe. Select all, right-click on some of them, and set the influence to 65% for all of them. Let's do a preview. This looks special. We practically have the animation finished. But if we want, we can add some adjustment layers with some effects. Here, I'm going to lighten the midtones a bit, and that's it. On this other adjustment layer, I'm going to add the Lumetri color effect. And in basic correction, I'm going to increase the temperature a little. A value of 10 is enough, but this is up to each individual's taste. On this other layer, I'm going to add the vignette effect to darken the edges a bit, and I'm going to leave it as it is by default. To give our animation a much more professional finish, let's go to the camera and activate the field blur, set the aperture to 150, and the blur level to 130, and that's how we achieve this cool effect. To start, we import this Photoshop file, which is separated into layers. Here, we choose the composition and editable layer style. We go to the composition and organize the layers. These two are from the left leg, so I'm going to paint them the same color. These are from the right leg. We'll parent this foot layer to the leg, and with the Pan Behind tool, we'll change its anchor point. We'll place it here so that the connector we make with the path will end up at this point. We do the same with the other foot, parenting it to its respective leg and changing its anchor point. We select the leg layers, and at the beginning of the timeline, we mark a keyframe on the rotation. At second 2, we rotate it this way. Well, so that the rotation doesn't look erratic, we have to place the anchor point on the leg layer here, so that it rotates from here. We also change the anchor point for the other leg. Now, yes, here we set the rotation to -12, and this other leg to 12 degrees. For now, I'm not going to worry about the keyframes. I'll leave them linear. We change the color of this arm layer, and now, without having any layers selected, we use the ellipse tool, remove the fill, and add a stroke. We position ourselves more or less in the center of the character and make a circle like this. We change the name, lower the opacity, and lock this layer. This reference circle will help us respect one of the 12 principles of animation called arcs. Most movements follow curved paths, which gives a much more realistic and organic feel. This way, we won't deform the image. We select the arm layer, and with the puppet pin tool, we'll mark points like this. These 4 are to lock the image in this part. We put another one around where the shoulder is and another one at the fingertips, adjusting as much as possible to our reference arc. We do the same on the other part. We display all the keyframes, and with the effects selected, we click on this point to see which one it is. It's this one here. We rename it left hand. Click on it and rename it right hand. We select the keyframes for the hands and delete all those we won't be using. Now we can start the animation. We select the pin for the left hand and move it down, using the ellipse we created as a reference. Right here, we're going to place a ruler to move the other hand to the same height. We select this pin and position it. It doesn't need to be perfect. The ellipse and the rulers are just guidelines. Now, in the second 2, we're going to move the arms upward. You'll see how easy it is. We'll leave it here and also place a ruler. We'll move this other arm upward, up to our reference layers. If you look closely, when the arms are in the center, they become a little shorter, so we deform the image a bit, making it look less realistic. We fix this with the Convert to Vertices tool. We position ourselves here on this handle, and using the ellipse, we'll give this movement the correct arc. We do the same with the one on the right hand. Now it looks perfect, and the image always maintains its proportions. Now we can smooth the keyframes and give them an influence between 70 and 75. We go back to the pen tool and create a path like this. It doesn't matter what it is, just that it has 2 points. We rename the layer Connector, change its color, and select the path. Now we open the Create Nulls from Paths script. Of these three options, we choose the first. This has created two nulls on the path, one at each end. Well, this one here, I'm going to parent it to the right foot, and this other null to the pin we marked earlier on the left hand. We rename them. These three layers are the same color, and now we're going to parent the right foot null with the pick whip to the right foot layer. We have to press the Control and Shift keys while parenting so that it acquires all the position properties of this layer. That's why we initially change the foot's anchor point to that part, so the path remains parented there. Now, let's parent the pick whip of this null's position to the left-hand puppet pin. Let's check that it works correctly. Let's duplicate these three layers to make another connector. We'll place this null on the left foot, rename it that way, and this other null will be parented to the right hand, rename it that way. Now with the pick whip, we'll parent this null to its corresponding layer. There we see that it's already parented to the foot, but the path isn't visible yet. We have to go to the connector layer, and in this option, change it to left foot. Perfect. We expand the expression for this null and parent it to the right-hand pin. The null is there, but in this option, we have to select right hand. If you're having trouble with this, write to me in the comments and we'll sort it out. We can add as many connectors as we want. The process is always the same. Let's duplicate these three layers and change their color. This null for the foot will stay there, but the one for the right hand, I'm going to parent it to the left leg. Here, we select left leg, and by pressing E twice, we expand the expression and deactivate it. We now have the path following the null. All that's left is to parent it to the left leg. Let's duplicate these three green layers and repeat the same process for the other leg. This null stays where it is. We deactivate the expression for it. And now, in this option, we choose left hand 2, which, by the way, I'm going to rename to right leg. All that's left is to parent this null to its corresponding layer. And move all these layers below, so the paths in front of the leg aren't visible. And this is how this characteristic effect is created from Julián Alborná's animations. Thank you for all the support you give to the channel. For this effect, I'm going to import these two files. I'm going to create a composition called text animation, 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames, and with 5 seconds to spare. Here, I'm going to add this audio layer. If we press the L key twice, we'll make the waves visible. Now, with the text tool, I'm going to write this sentence. We'll center the anchor point and also center the view. This font I'm using, called San Francisco Pro, in its regular version, I've set these parameters. For kerning, I've set a value of -60, so the letters are a little closer together, and I've left adjustified this text. I'm going to set the opacity to 10. And I'm also going to add the simple choker effect. Support you give to the channel. Here we set a value of 1 to slightly contract the thickness of the letters. We duplicate the text and remove the effect, setting the opacity to 100. Support you give to the channel. Thank you for all the support you give to the channel. We expand it, and in animate, we select the opacity. We set it to 0. At the beginning of the timeline, we mark a keyframe on start. And now we adjust the timing to the audio we've chosen, more or less around this point. We set it back to 100. If we don't want the text to be revealed letter by letter, here in Advanced, we can select Words. This depends on individual preference. If we lower the softness to 0, the words will appear suddenly. Support you give to the channel. I'll leave it at 50%. Without having anything selected, we'll add another animator, this time a color fill RGB. Thank you for all the support you give to the channel. You can set any color you like best. Thank you for all the support. I'll leave it yellow like this. We set the offset property to -50. To the channel. Mark a keyframe at the beginning of the timeline, and a little further on, set this value to 100. We expand it to Advanced, change to Words, and from Square, change it to Smooth, and look at the cool effect we achieved. You can change the color if you want. I'm going to leave it as it was. If we want to write something else and have all the text layers modify automatically, we select all the text layers and write source text here. Now we would just have to parent this pick whip to this layer, which would be the master text. Right now there are only 2 layers, but imagine you have 20 or more text layers. Then you would only have to write in one, and the change would affect all of them. By expanding the keyframes, we could adjust the timing to our audio. I'm going to add a couple of effects to this text layer. The first is Deep Glow. This is a paid plugin, but if you don't have it installed, you can also use the default glow in After Effects, although this one looks spectacular. Here I'm going to make a minimal correction so that the glow is very subtle. We put this text layer in Add mode, and now we're going to add the Turbulent Displace effect. We set the amount to 2 and the size to 20. Now, with the Alt key pressed, we click on the evolution clock and type posterize time, and in parentheses 6, and on the line below, time times 1500. With this, we achieve that characteristic trembling effect that we can see in the text animations in Julian's reels. We copy the effect and apply it to the text layer below. We select both and press the E key twice to display the expressions. Now we parent this pick whip to the effect on the layer above so the shaking is synchronized. With this, we'll obviously have it. We can place any video or image we want below the text. I'll add the vignette effect to this adjustment layer with these values. Thank you for all the support you give to the channel. We'll place the text layers on top, and we'll parent this one to this other one. All that's left is to position the text, and that's it. In this last effect, we'll see how to achieve a look similar to Julian's reels. To do this, I'm going to import these two textures. I'm going to create a background in this composition for a better view. Now, I'm going to select all the connectors to change their color to black. And I'm going to leave the thickness at 4 pixels. To create the shadows, I'm going to use the Shadow Studio plugin. But if you don't have it installed, in this tutorial, I'll explain how to create these shadows without plugins. Set the distance to 500 and the master opacity to about 10. Copy the effect and paste it onto the legs and feet. Look at these cool shadows. Let's create a new composition called Effects Montage, 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames, with 10 seconds left over. Here we add the human body and reduce the scale a bit. I'm going to go into this composition and right-click. I'm going to make the background layer a guide layer, so it's only visible in this composition. We'll place this texture underneath and adjust its scale. Look, the shadows are cut off here. To fix this, we'll go back into the composition and select all the layers, convert them to 3D, and create a 35mm camera with a node. We'll move it back a bit, setting it to -2500 on the Z-axis. We're not making the background layer 3D. Now notice, the shadows are no longer cut off. we'll also make these two layers 3D. And right-click, we'll create a camera with these settings. Again, right-click, New, Null Object, make it 3D, and parent the camera to it. We'll mark a keyframe at 215, and at the beginning of the timeline, we'll zoom in a bit. In Z, we put 790, and in Y-axis, a value of 320. We smooth this keyframe and set the influence to 100%. We duplicate the null to make another movement, delete these keyframes, and mark a new one. This animation will start at 112. We parent the previous one to this one and advance to 318. Now we move the scene to the left. We put a value of 1540 on the x-axis. We smooth them, and with a right click, we set the influence to 80%. To make this cut transition, we are going to stand at this peak, which is where the animation goes fastest. And right at that point, we are going to cut the camera. Now we are going to look for a different frame. On the Z-axis, we put negative 1000. In X negative 585, and in Y negative 240. This is how we get this cut transition, very typical of Julián's reels. To make the halftone texture, we duplicate this composition from the project panel and rename it. We duplicate this one as well, and with the Alt key pressed, we replace it. We add the tint effect and leave it as default. We'll also add the extract effect. For this composition, we'll set the shadow distance to 300. Copy the effect and paste it to the leg and foot layers. We invert the extract effect, and with these sliders, we'll be left with only the shadows and dark areas. If we move the bottom slider to the left, we can soften the pixel extraction. We place this halftone texture on top and adjust its scale. To fill in all these empty spaces, we apply the CC Reptile effect and expand it 1,500 pixels to the left and right. From Repeat, we change to Unfold. Now, we have to make this texture an alpha matte for this composition. And notice, the halftone texture only affects the shadows in this composition, which is exactly what we want. We put this layer in multiply mode, and notice what a cool texture and effect we get. If we want larger dots, we increase the scale of the texture and vice versa. In this adjustment layer, we're going to make a small color correction, adding a tint effect. If you have the Magic Bullet Looks plugin installed, you can choose from many preset color adjustments. I'm going to choose this one called Bunker, but you can use whatever you like best. Let's create another adjustment layer with the Posterized Time effect. And to achieve that choppy motion effect, we'll set the frame rate to 12. We'll position ourselves right above the transition cut. We add the camera lens blur effect to this adjustment layer to create a bit of blur in the transition. Without moving from here, we'll set the value to 10 and mark a keyframe. We'll move 10 frames back and set it to 0, and 10 frames forward, we'll also set it to 0, smoothing these two keyframes. On this adjustment layer, we'll add the Gaussian blur effect. With a value of 20. With the layer selected, double-click the ellipse tool to create a mask. Set it to subtract mode and set the feathering to about 300. This will blur the edges of the composition. Finally, let's create another adjustment layer with a vignette effect to darken the edges a bit, and that's it. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll answer them all. See you in the next video. If we want the blurring of this transition to be more noticeable, we can expand the keyframes and set the center keyframe to 20. Now we adjust timing of the keyframes on the sides, and that's it.